The Manhattan Project employed nearly 130,000 people. It had scientists, engineers, military officers, secretaries, and many more jobs. But naturally, a question arises. Why? Einstein famously said mankind invented the atomic bomb, but no mouse would ever construct the mousetrap. So why would thousands of people come together to create humanity's mousetrap? We'll look at this answer through another lens, another organization, fictitious, but even more relevant to our question. The SCP Foundation exists for only 3 goals: secure, contain, protect. It documents reality-bending entities, immortal creatures, and entities capable of rewriting the laws of nature itself. It faces things that no conscious being should ever have to deal with. So, what are the motivations behind an organization like this? At first glance, we think what we want most is control over our lives. But I don't think it's control that we crave, I think it's certainty. Control is simply the tool that we use to reduce certainty. And to survive that uncertainty, the SCP Foundation doesn't just use one tool, it built entire systems of control to make that uncertainty more manageable. So there are many systems of control that the Foundation uses to reduce uncertainty. And the first system they use is securing information. Why should the Foundation hide the truth instead of telling everyone? They could tell everyone and everyone would be safe because they have that information. But that's because the biggest enemy to the Foundation isn't monsters, but public outrage. An anomaly only becomes a societal threat once the public knows about it. So that's the reason. They have to hide the truth to make sure that people are in the dark and they don't know about the horrors that await them in the unknown. But this does have a cost. Securing information costs their integrity and trustworthiness. Some of the ways the Foundation does this is through amnestics, which are essentially devices or substances that erases the memory of anyone who comes into contact with that. So they use these amnestics to erase the memories of civilians who've witnessed anomalies. Some other ways they do this is by using mass cover-up stories to cover up supernatural events, using examples like gas leaks, accidents, terrorism, or even natural disasters. Classifications and security measures decided by the O5 Council decide who gets to know what and what information everyone has. But the most famous way of securing information in the SCP universe is, of course, redactions. Data expunged, black bars, and censored names exist all throughout SCP documents to make sure that people know what they need to know. But securing information is merely the first task. Now we need to deal with the actual situation at hand. The next system of control that the Foundation uses to reduce uncertainty is containing reality. The ultimate goal of the Foundation is not just to contain anomalies, it's to make the universe more predictable, and nature itself more predictable as well. This is why they rarely destroy anomalies altogether unless absolutely needed. They contain them. They learn their rules, their rituals, and run experiments on them, and every one of those experiments is ultimately to reduce that uncertainty. But this type of containment and experimentation also costs lives. An example of this would be continuous D-class testing. D-class personnel refers to a set of the population that consists of death row inmates, prisoners of war, and in rare instances, even refugees. They are routinely exposed to these dangerous SCPs, so researchers don't have to risk critical staff. But this does come with its own set of ethical questions and moral qualms, as they are essentially sacrificing lives to experiments. But the SCP Foundation doesn't just risk D-class personnel. At worst, they kill civilians. For example, in the SCP-5000 storyline, which is set in an alternate timeline, the SCP Foundation essentially comes to the conclusion that the anomaly threatening reality is humanity itself. As a result, it deliberately wages war against humanity using their own anomalies to prevent an even more existential threat to reality. So essentially they use anomalies to eradicate another anomaly. So millions die because the Foundation believes that it's the only rational way to preserve reality itself. So there are situations where the Foundation will go to any length to contain an anomaly or even destroy it. But right now, the cost of using this system is something as sacred as human life. But the Foundation loses something even more important in the next system of control that they use: protecting order. The Foundation regularly commits horrible acts of violence and debauchery that, at the very least, they think they're forced to do. Whether they're actually forced to or not, that's up to interpretation, as is with all organizations doing horrible things. But when people routinely do these things, they start to lose their sanity. We have to keep in mind that the Foundation consists of multiple individuals that are human beings with a conscience and emotions. So what happens when people start to go insane from the regularly horrible actions they commit just to preserve humanity and survive this uncertainty? The solution to this would be bureaucracy. Every anomaly is given a SCP number, regardless of what it is. We turned terrifying cosmic horrors and reality-bending entities into sterile numbered files to strip away their power. There are object classes, for example, Safe, Euclid, Keeler, Thaumiel, etc., for classifying risk. But it's not just to classify risk, it's to reduce these unimaginable horrors into administrative categories for budgeting reasons and research priority and containment planning. Labels turn gods into a mere classification. I think this system of control shows us that once something has a label, even if it's just as dangerous, it starts to lose power a little bit. But reducing these horrors into essentially numbers on a system does have its consequences. You start to slowly lose your emotional stability. Because to reduce these horrors into specific numbers, you can't just turn off a specific emotion, you have to reduce your overall capacity for emotions itself. A prevailing mindset of the SCP Foundation is cold but not cruel. But this isn't how they operate, it's just how they justify the things that they do. It's a bureaucratic mindset. Staff are expected to be emotionally detached when dealing with these horrible beings, but also when committing horrible actions to contain these beings. An excellent example of this would be SCP-231. SCP-231 refers to 7 women associated with the Scarlet King. When the first 6 women gave birth, they led to catastrophic events that led to devastating consequences, which are actually redacted as well. The 7th, SCP-2317, is the last one, and she is kept under containment because the Foundation believes that she could cause an end-of-the-world scenario. But the containment procedure isn't that simple. To prevent her from giving birth, the SCP Foundation needs to perform a containment procedure called Procedure Wunsen-Montauk every 24 hours. Now, if you know anything about this procedure, you know how it is. The procedure is redacted in the original document, but it is portrayed as something horrific and devastating not just to SCP-2317, but to the actual person performing the procedures as well. In fact, the only personnel that are permitted to perform these actions are D-class personnel, specifically sex offenders. So you can guess what the procedure actually is. At the end of the original documentation, there's a OFI Council memo that addresses the concerns behind the procedure and has this as a final note. The Foundation does many distasteful things in the completion of our mission, but our mission is important enough that the price is one we must pay. Containment of SCP-231 is one of our dangerous duties, not because of any direct danger to ourselves, but because of the danger that a resolve will fail, that we will allow ourselves to either let down our guard due to sympathy for the suffering of an innocent, or that we will allow ourselves to become monsters through the performance of monstrous acts. This is the prevailing philosophy of the entire Foundation. They must do these things because that is their mission, and if they don't, reality itself might collapse. I think what we can learn from the SCP Foundation and why we built it is individuals can't do horrible actions. A single person is very unlikely to commit the things that they need to do to survive. But when it's a group, an institution, that's when it becomes more possible. But what would originally get to them committing those horrible actions in the first place? What would be the need? The need is to reduce uncertainty. When we look back at the Manhattan Project, we ask ourselves the question, why? Why would they build a weapon capable of destroying humanity itself? It's because they were uncertain. World War II was dragging on, essentially, and they needed something to finish it quickly. They needed a weapon capable of ending a war, and in turn, making things certain. They need to be certain that they'll survive, even at the cost of hundreds and thousands of lives. I think what we can learn from the SCP Foundation and the Manhattan Project is that we don't crave control, we crave certainty. Human brains cannot deal with ambiguity because ambiguity leads to unpredictability and fear and the unknown. And the larger the uncertainty is, the more horrible actions we will do to survive the uncertainty.